Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, whenever you're watching this podcast. My name is Erwin Ho, microbiologist here in Belgium at host ZNK, so the hospital outbreak support team in the Kempish hospitals. Exceptionally, I'm also going to do the podcast in English today because I have a very interesting topic I will discuss immediately. I will talk about the Nipah virus, actually. But first, like I do every week, I'm going to have a look at the respiratory surveillance here in Belgium because it's, of course, wintertime and so there's a high amount of respiratory viruses. And in Belgium, we have a thing we call the winter plan, where based on surveillance, the government will advise citizens and hospitals to wear protective measures. In Belgium right now, it's code orange, which means that masks are recommended in hospitals. And the communications to do that, we've also disseminated a couple of weeks ago. So when we look at the surveillance data, we're still firmly in code orange. All the influenza parameters, both in the wastewater and also in the family doctors, so the general practices, and also in the hospital, so admissions for severe acute respiratory infections. All those indicators are high, and they remain high. In terms of RSV, indicators are dropping down. When we have a look in the close by European context at the ERVIS data, it looks like the amount of admissions seems to be dropping, but this is not what we see currently in our hospitals in Belgium. And also, if you look at the percentage of amount of tests that are positive in general practice, we saw it dipping down a couple of weeks ago, and it's coming back up. So yeah, code orange, high amount of respiratory infections. It's still going on in Belgium, so masks are still recommended in code orange. So the reason I'm speaking in English this week is because I want to talk about the Nipah virus. Actually, there's a colleague here in one of our hospitals who has actually told me about this virus. So Dr. Harald de Kouwer, who is a colleague neurologist of the hospital in Geel. And he has told me about the Nipah virus. At the time when he told me about it, which was a couple of days ago, I haven't heard about it. But a day after he mentioned it, it was in the news. So Nipah virus, what is it? Currently, there's an outbreak going on in India, in West-Bengal, where I believe 5 cases have been confirmed, and currently 2 people are infected. Of these 2 most recently infected people, a contact tracing has been done by local authorities, and none of them have symptoms and none of them are positive. But local authorities and also neighboring countries are doing precautionary measures, like they're checking the airports, and everyone is really looking into this infection. So what is it, Nipah virus? A Nipah virus is an RNA virus. It's a negative stranded RNA virus from the family of the paramyxoviruses. They are related to mumps and measles and also the para-influenza viruses, but their genome is a lot longer. The first outbreaks with these viruses were actually discovered in Malaysia, and that's where the name comes from. So Nipah refers to Kampung Sungai Nipah, which is a village near Port Dickson in Malaysia. And they first found it in 1998 in pig farmers. These people would get viral infections, which were at first quite aspecific symptoms, but they did evolve into encephalitis and meningitis signs, so neurological signs. At first, local authorities thought it was an outbreak of Japanese encephalitis, so they were actually rolling out vaccination programs and public education in terms of Japanese encephalitis, but it was discovered that it was another virus causing this infection. And throughout the years until now, there have been very localized outbreaks of this Nipah virus infection in Asia, Southeast Asia mostly, and also in South Asia, so in India, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Singapore, there are cases as well. So in these countries, they have seen it. The reservoir of this virus is actually a fruit bat, which is of the genus Pteropus. So these are not the same bats which are present in Western Europe. And these bats, they feed off palm trees, so both in Malaysia and also in the other parts of Asia. And these palm trees, they are so it's the virus is present in the saliva of these bats, and inside these palm trees there is sap, which is nutritious and which is also sometimes consumed by the locals, and it's through this route that the virus can be transmitted. Once an individual, a human, is infected, a human-to-human transmission is also possible. Through close contact, also through droplets. So if you have close contact, there is a transmission possible. What is the reproduction number of Nipah virus? It's comparatively low. The first reports currently in the literature say it's 0.48, so it's under 1. But this is likely an underestimation. It does seem to be compatible with what we're seeing in the most recent outbreak, but yeah, it's most likely still an underestimation, but it's under 1. So this means that whenever an individual is cured or has passed away from the infection, X amount of people will contract the infection. And so if it's under 1, then usually an infection will fizzle out, but if it's over 1, then it can propagate. To compare, COVID-19 has a reproduction number of 2 or 3, so that's much more contagious. So it looks like so the Nipah virus is not that infectious. So why is it so dangerous then, and why is it in the news? It's because the case fatality rate of this virus is extremely high. So it does start with aspecific symptoms. It does go into encephalitis signs, and once you have a severe infection, the case fatality rate is 40 to 75%. So in these very small outbreaks, for instance in Bangladesh, one of the more recent outbreaks, where you had 11 infected people, and 10 of these people, they consumed that palm tree sap, which was also infected by bats who were also consuming this palm tree sap, and all of these people actually, and 75% of these people passed away. So very high, potentially high case fatality rate. There's currently no cure for it, and no vaccine either. In terms of medication, once infection is ongoing, in the outbreak in the 90s, they did try ribavirin, but it's inconclusive if that's a therapeutic option. Remdesivir, which we also know from the COVID time, is also a possibility, but also of uncertain effect. What's more plausible is monoclonal antibodies, which can be used, which target the Nipah G glycoproteins. That's also a route that can be used. In terms of vaccine, there is actually very recently in December a phase 2 trial which has started for a vaccine against Nipah virus, and it will sound familiar. It's called ChAdOx1 Nipah B, and ChAdOx, that's the chimp adenovirus vector. This is actually the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. So it's the same company and the same vector that's being used, but not for COVID-19, but for Nipah virus. So this is currently in phase 2, and so trials are ongoing for this vaccine. But of course, it's because it's so rare, these outbreaks are very small and the amount of people infected are very low. So the trials are progressing quite slowly, but yeah, it's going on right now. In January 2026, there is an outbreak ongoing. So we hope that we can get this virus off the ground. Is there an immediate danger for people from Belgium or from Western Europe inside our own country or when we travel? The ECDC has deemed the risk quite low because of the low reproduction number and how the infection seems to be, and the outbreak is seeming to be progressing currently. General precautionary measures when traveling in that region are of course recommended, and not to consume any meats, bad meat for instance, or also fruits in that region, especially if it's not untreated or not cooked. It's not recommended to do that. And when you're traveling in the area in Southeast Asia and South Asia, you might come across these inspections and these preventative precautionary measures from the local governments, for instance in airports. But currently the risk is deemed by the ECDC quite low. Of course, the CDC does categorize Nipah virus as a potentially hazardous bioterrorism agent, so they put it in the category C, which is an emerging threat. To compare, COVID-19 is category A. Other infections are category B, are not as dangerous, but this one is put in category C, so potentially dangerous. A final anecdote about Nipah virus, which I found very interesting, so there's a lot of stuff to talk about and to learn about this virus, is that actually the 2011 Steven Soderbergh movie Contagion, which was also watched quite profusely when COVID-19 came out, is actually based on Nipah virus. So in that movie, you had a virus which came from the bats, went through the pigs, like in Malaysia, and then infected humans and caused encephalitis. Of course, in the movie, the case fatality rate was also very high, with millions of people passing away. And a lot of the things that happened in that movie we saw happening at COVID-19. But that movie is again based on the Nipah virus, and even a couple of the images of the virus which were used in the movie were actually images of Nipah virus. So very interesting. A final anecdote about Nipah virus is that actually that virus and that infection and the outbreak also shows the effects of global warming, because you have the chain of infection, the zoonosis. So it's basically a bad virus, but because their habitat is being encroached upon and decreases, they come in contact with human habitation and human activity, such as those pig farms. And those pigs, they will feed, and also humans will feed from those palm trees, the sap, and also be in the vicinity. And then you get these bad feces and also the contamination from the bats. The virus comes close by to humans. Humans contract the infection, and then you have human-to-human transmission, and you get these outbreaks. This would be less likely to happen if human activity was not so close to the habitats of the bats, of these fruit bats. So a very interesting illustration of how global warming and changing climate has a direct human health risk. So, all right, so that's the episode of this week about Nipah virus. So we are continuing to monitor the situation of the outbreak in West-Bengal, so in India. But so far the risk seems to be low. But so thanks to Dr. De Kouwer here in Geel, we've learned a bit about the Nipah virus. So, all right, so this was the episode of this week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you all next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.